Good afternoon and welcome back to My Life. I'm George and it is a pleasure for me to be here with Teri Stiles
Yes.
this afternoon.
Thank you.
Teri is in a different spot. Normally
Yeah.
she's on the other side of the camera or the other side of the studio here.
Right.
So we're going to find out about Teri's life. And as we kibitz before the show, you had a very interesting beginning. You said you were a native of Lake Orion.
Yes.
And when you were born where? In Pontiac?
Pontiac. It was Pontiac Osteopathic.
Okay, Pontiac
time.
Osteopathic Hospital. And you
Right.
said that it was a new hospital. They converted a hotel into a hospital.
Correct, right.
So in essence, you could say you were born in a hotel.
I was born in a hotel. I came out breech.
Breech, okay.
Yeah, complete breech. Proud presentation, I guess they called it at
Okay.
that time. And then when I was baptized, they were building the Episcopalian church on 24 that they just tore down. So they were holding service in the chicken coop.
Wow.
Previous.
Okay, so you were baptized in a chicken coop.
I was. Came out backwards, born in a hospital, baptized in a chicken coop. I'm not doing bad.
No, you're doing very well.
We lived in Bunny Run at that time, and at that time it was basically its own little community.
Okay.
Bunny Run was.
Was that like a post-war subdivision then?
Yes, it was. Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, right on Long Lake.
Okay.
So I've lived all over Lake Orion. Every time I talk to somebody, I say, oh yeah, I used to live there. And my parents were kind of like the original flippers.
Oh, okay.
I was born in Bunny Run, lived there till I was 5.
Okay.
And then they built a house on Pine Tree, right across from the Pine Tree School.
Oh, so
So
it
we were
made
like
it
one of
convenient
the
for kids
third-
then going to school.
Well, the school wasn't there at the time.
Oh,
In
okay.
fact, we could look across the field and see Indianwood, the peaks
Okay.
of Indianwood. It was a different building at that time, Indianwood Golf Course. And then they built all those canals in there after when I was in high school. That was done. And the school was built, I believe, even after I graduated high school.
Okay, so you went to bus to another elementary school then, or was it kind of a neighborhood
I went to
school?
Weber School.
Okay.
We were bused to Weber. Interesting, when we moved on Pine Tree, it was called Shady Lane. And then while we lived there, they changed it to Pine Tree. I was very confused. I was like, did we move again? I was only about 4 or 5 when we
And you're
moved
trying to
there.
learn your address.
Right, I knew it
didn't
was
change it.
151, but I did not know the street. And it was Pine Tree. And then they took us to Weber until I was in 3rd grade, and then they split the district, and then they bused us to what's now the Eamon Center.
Okay.
So I went there. It was the old high school, which was confusing to me because my brother had been going to high school there, and I was only 4 or 5, so nothing made sense to me. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to my brother's high school. I'm the youngest of 4.
Okay.
My brother's 12 years older than I
Okay.
am. So when I was in kindergarten,
So as
he
we
was in
talked
high
about,
school.
he was post-war baby boom as I
Yes,
was, and then you came along years after that. then.
Yeah, 12 years later.
Very good. So Lake Orion Schools.
Yes.
Anything as far as the subject-wise, anything that really interested you?
I was, I liked all subjects. So I was, at 10 years old, I was diagnosed as dyslexic. And they didn't know what to do with those kids at that time. So I was basically put in the back of the room and I hated it. I'd see numbers that, they were adding 54 and something, and I was seeing 45 and something. So my answer was never the same as the rest of. But that changed when I started wearing my glasses. I got over my, do I look cute in glasses or not? And I got better at all academics, but it was quite a struggle. So I fell towards music. My family is very musically inclined. My father played guitar. My brother played all over the United States. My sister and her husband played with, I don't know if you remember Chad Mitchell and the Chad Mitchell Trio.
Yes,
My brother-in-law was his guitar player. At any rate, so I loved music. In fact, it got me to Switzerland. But I'll back up a little bit. I did go to school 1 year almost in San Diego. My parents decided to move to San Diego in my
So
sophomore
from
year.
Lake Orion, just upped and moved to,
May as well have planted me on the moon. We lived on a farm, so we lived all over Lake Orion. After Pine Tree, we moved to, my father wanted to live on a farm, so we moved to Indian Lake Road and bought a farm. And so from there, then we moved out again. They fixed that up, and we moved out to Indian Lake. We lived on the lake.
you moved again then?
Again, so by the time I was 14, we had moved out to Indian Lake, doing really well there. There were 18 kids in the neighborhood, all school age. It was a great place to grow up. We'd go down to the lake in the morning and come home at 10:30 at night. It was just wonderful. And lo and behold, my aunt and her husband moved to San Diego, and my mom went, "Oh, we have to do that too." And my dad was a Marine, and he had done his military training in San Diego, and he said, "Yep, love it, let's go." I was a sophomore, and my sister was a senior.
So
and
your
we
two older siblings were out of the house,
Gone.
but two of you were still there.
Yes.
And you just uprooted and went to San Diego.
It was devastating. I had
Horrible.
a boyfriend, she
High
had a
school?
boyfriend.
Yeah, high school, that's critical
Yeah.
time.
Very critical. And they realized that by about January, and they sent my older sister home so she could graduate in Lake Orion. Well, I threw such a temper tantrum. I just was miserable. And so they had bought a condo out there. They sold that, and by May, we came home. But then I'm into Lake Orion High School. I knew everybody, but they had already formed all of their cliques. So I really got involved in music and with my band people. And by my junior year, our band was selected by Dr. Ravelli, who
U of
was
M.
from U of M. He bought a school in Switzerland, and he took our band and a band from Ohio to this school in Switzerland during the summer, and we trained under him. I have the chills.
Wow,
I
that
was
is
very
cool.
fortunate, right?
That is amazing.
And a lot of that had to do with our band director. Rob Shadle was hard on people, hard on all of us.
His brother was a band director in Clarkston.
Yes,
Dick
yes,
Shadle.
exactly. Rob was one of the best instructors I ever had. He made me be good.
And what was your instrument?
I played the piccolo.
Piccolo, okay.
And after we went to Switzerland, so we traveled all around Switzerland and played in castles, and it was wonderful. It was a wonderful summer, and we all learned a lot, that's for sure. And then that next year, I tried out for the honors band, the Michigan Honors Band, and I was the only piccolo player they picked.
The state of Michigan then?
Yeah.
Wow.
State honors band. So
That's when you were a
it did me
senior in
well.
high school then?
I was, yes, yep,
Okay.
I was a senior. And so music was my life and my passion.
Did your boyfriend wait for you?
No.
He didn't, okay.
Well, he did, until my senior, after I graduated.
Oh.
So it's a sad story because I really loved him. But my father started an auto body repair shop. And so my parents couldn't afford to send me to college at that time. And when I told him, he said he didn't want an uneducated wife.
Oh, wow.
And so we parted ways. He was going to GMI at the time, and he became very successful. He's currently a professor at Western, and I think the director of the engineering department, so he did very well. And we
And you're
remained
doing well,
friends.
too,
I'm
yeah.
doing very well as well. And I found, when I was 12, I met my husband, who was in the music scene with my brother and my sister.
Okay,
And
so he was a Lake Orion person too then?
Yes, he went to Lake Orion and then Pontiac.
Okay.
And then, but somehow they met in the music scene, the Bob Seger music scene.
Okay.
And so,
So how's a piccolo end up in rock music? Or the other
well,
family
we
was
were actually
guitar?
folk music.
Oh,
We were
okay.
real folk,
Okay.
big time, my whole family. So when my niece was born, my husband, I was 18 at that time, or 17, my husband came to visit, and we re-met.
Oh.
So I knew him, and had kind of a crush on him when I was 12, and then we re-met, and we've been married 44 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
We're going to take a break right
Okay.
now. Okay.
Got that out of the way.
Hi, I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Teri Stiles. Did you know that Charter Channel 191 and AT&T Channel 99 are the only television stations you can find all the events and news just for you?
Oxford News This Week is your news closer to home. Catch us right here weekdays at noon, 6:30, and 11 p.m. and weekends at noon and 11 p.m.
See you there.
Welcome back, and we're continuing now with Teri Stiles. We've had an interesting first segment, and now I can't wait for the second. We were talking about your interest in music and how at graduation you weren't able to go on to school and you separated from the boyfriend. You reconnected with your current husband, though, at that time.
Right.
But after school, when you didn't go to college, what did you do then during that time?
I went to Barbizon Fashion Line and Design School because when I was 13, a friend of my mom and dad's owned a modeling agency and needed two young girls. I think I was 12 when the first time I modeled for them, to demonstrate and model. And of course, you know, he grabbed the neighbor girls, and I fell in love with the whole business. I loved the lights and everything else. Didn't know that that's not really what I was in love with. I was in love with this, but I did that for 2 years. And
so modeling then for 2 years after high school?
No, this was when I was like a junior.
Oh, still in high school?
Yeah,
So,
I was, actually, no, I was 12, 13, and 14.
okay, you did that initially, but then
Right.
after high
it
school
made me-
graduation,
right.
you went to Barbizon's.
Barbizon, right, School of Fashion Line and Design.
Okay.
And modeling. That didn't turn out for me.
So did you learn to be a model then, or what was
No,
the school
I didn't like it.
Okay.
It turned out to be more architectural design, which I wasn't that interested in. So I got married.
Oh, okay.
So I got married, and Don and I moved to California. So my poor parents, right, 2 or 3 years earlier, we were devastated because we lived in California. And bless them, we did a lot of stuff when my parents moved us out there. There were 17 of us, actually, that were around the same age, between my aunt and her children and my sister and I, and then my aunt's neighbors and their children. So we all moved out to San Diego at the same time, and we were teenagers. So they did a lot with us. They took us to Disney World, Disneyland, anytime we wanted to go. We went to, what was the one with the ocean, with all the orcas and stuff? SeaWorld.
Okay.
SeaWorld. And I met 35 stars. I actually had an opportunity at that time, so I was 17.
So you were near Hollywood then, or
We lived in San Diego,
Yeah, in San
and they
Diego.
took us wherever we wanted to go. We were spoiled little brats because they wanted us to like it out there. Well, who's the guy that did Tiny Bubbles? He was on every Saturday night.
Don Ho?
No. I always want to say Art Linkletter. He did a 1 and a 2 and a. I can't think of him.
Lawrence Welk.
Lawrence Welk. So I met him one day. We were at a golf outing, and he was there. Andy Williams, Fred McMurray. There was a whole bunch. Max Baer. Met a whole bunch of them. But his manager, I saw him nod to his manager. I was trying to get his autograph, and his manager grabbed me and said he would like to talk to you. But a newscaster came and did an interview with him. He said, "Keep her around." And I was scared to death.
He knew
I
you
was
played a
really
piccolo.
Quite shy, actually. But my family's in music, right? So I knew who he was, and my mother was standing behind me going, "Teri, just stay here." And I'm like, "No, I've got to go get another autograph." Well, so he came back from his interview and asked me if I knew how to sing. No, I don't know how to sing. And my mom's like, "Yes, she does." So he said, "Well, I'd like you to come to my studio and sing for me, audition." And okay. And so then he asked me my age, and I was 17, and I had to be 18.
Oh, boy.
So I didn't get to audition for him. And he said, "As soon as you turn 18, come back."
And by that time,
he had
you
to
had fled the
leave, and
area.
we came back to Michigan, right? But his manager said that's how he got a lot of the girls on his show. Was he'd just meet them out in public like that and ask them to come sing for him.
That's
so
cool.
I missed my big Hollywood stardom, but I never would have been able to
You
sing
could have
for
been
the
one
man.
of the. that was
We
my
used to
parents'
watch-
favorite show, so everybody watched
yeah,
it.
sure. I was a mess. I was really, really very shy in school. You wouldn't know it now, but I was very shy. And so I was a mess. And the only reason why I said, yes, I sing, is my mother was standing behind. Yes, she does. She sings. She, bless her heart. So I had a great opportunity out there. So when the opportunity came around when I was married for Don and I to move out there, I was like, sure, okay. I did like California. I had a boyfriend back here. It was school. So 2 or 3 years later, my poor parents, we moved out there, and we lived there for 5 years.
Wow.
His best friend lived out there. Don makes artificial limbs and braces, and there was a big hub out in San Jose. And so we went out there, and I got involved in real estate. So I forgot about modeling and everything else. And
So real estate became your focus then?
yes, it did, for 5 years. And then I became pregnant for my
Okay.
oldest son, and I decided it was crazy out there. You know, it was very crowded, and what they say about the people out there, they're just, they're transient, so they're not as friendly. So I felt very alone. So we came back, moved back to Michigan so I could raise my kids with my siblings' kids at the same time they were having children as well. So we moved back to Michigan, and I moved to Oxford.
Oh, Oxford.
Right. So I have spent my entire adult
So you were
life.
married in 75, and from 75 to 80, you were in California.
81,
And in 80, you came back to
Yes,
80,
in
81 you
81 we came back here.
81 you came back
and
to
I've
Oxford.
been in Oxford ever since until about 2010. And we sold our house,
Okay.
and we now live in Ortonville on the
Oh,
lake over there.
Okay.
But Oxford's my heart and my home. So I'm missing a bunch. So after we moved back home, I
You had one child.
had one child, right, and got into the mental health industry and worked in mental health it was the Oxford Institute at the time. It was a drug rehab center. Worked there in St. John's Hospital. Worked there for 5 or 6 years, and then they closed down. So I ended up at Oakland Family Services in Pontiac, and worked there for 5 years, and I was done with mental health. And the lights kept calling me. I still was interested. I had seen a lot of television work out in California. I had experienced some television station stuff here as an audience member, Channel 7.
Okay.
And I just couldn't get it out of the back of my mind. So by that time I had 2 children. Let's see, my youngest was then a sophomore or junior in high school.
Oh, so
Both of them went to school here in Oxford.
Okay, so a lot of time passed then
So
while
time
you were
had
in the
passed,
community
right.
mental health, and basically during the time they were in school.
While they were growing up, right,
Yeah.
I worked in mental health. So I decided I'm done with mental health, and went to Specs, Howard School of Broadcasting, and that's how I ended up getting into TV.
So that was roughly what years then?
I think that was 96, and I did my internship here.
Oh, at Oxford TV?
Yep, so I've been here ever since,
Okay.
in one
and-
capacity or another. I guess
Okay,
we
and
can
that
talk
was,
about that.
so the time with when you knew Don Rush was before that then?
Oh yeah, so do we need...
We're going to take a break, and then
Okay.
we're going to come back and tie in Don
yeah,
Rush,
back
then
and
we're going to
forth.
leap ahead to where we
Okay,
are now.
all right,
Okay,
sounds great.
very good. Welcome back for the final segment with Teri, and we were talking about going to Specs Howard and the broadcasting, but I knew you had some time with newspapers before that. So before we
Right.
launch into what you're doing here, let's go back and tie in the newspaper. I know a former student of mine, Don Rush, is with
Yeah.
Sherman Papers and everything,
Right.
and you worked where?
He was actually my boss for a while. So it was about a month after I graduated from Specs.
Okay.
my nephew's wife was the editor of the newspaper in Ortonville, the Citizen, and she said, I need help. She lost her reporter. I need you to come and report for me. I had no idea. I said, I don't even know how to write. I have no idea. There's a difference between journalistic
style,
writing,
yes.
right, and broadcast writing. It doesn't matter, just get me through till I find a reporter. Well, I ended up there for 5 years.
Wow.
I really liked it. I really liked the community. I liked being involved in the community. I think that was my road to really being community conscious. So I wrote there for 5 years. I transferred over to Oxford and worked there for a little while. At the same time, I was doing an internship here, and I was also doing the news at night here, as a volunteer. Then I just ended up working here and dropping the newspaper and focusing here.
So how long has Oxford TV been around then? Quite
Since
a while?
86 or 87.
And Bill also involved since that time?
So no, Bill, so when I started here, it was Jamie Hughes and a gentleman by I can't recall his name right now. And then Howard Hefline was doing the news. And I started doing that with him. So it was 3 of us. And we kept that up until the gentleman that was kind of running the place, I cannot remember his name, so sorry, he left, and they hired Don Hugerich as the manager. And then we all moved over to the studio that we just left. And so it was Don
and Bill was a photographer
Jim,
initially. When I first met Bill,
right.
He was a photographer.
And so it was myself, and then Dave Kenny started doing the news with us. And then Bill came in about 2004. So 4 or 5 years later. And Bill and I then, and Jamie were about the only ones doing anything. And Bill and I, that's when Bill and I started our community access, and we're still doing it. So we've been doing it since 2004, 15 years together.
That's outstanding.
Yeah, we've worked 15 years.
What you've provided for the community can't be duplicated. It's the essence of the news, the activities, the school, community groups.
The business,
it's like a web that binds everything together.
Well, I've always looked at it as recorders of history. There at one time there's all those pictures, those static pictures that we have to go back to the 1800s for Oxford and our communities, Edison and Thomas and Oakwood. And then there was an entire period of time, probably from the 60s on, people weren't then interested in recording the history of the communities. So I feel like we've been a part of that, and it's been an honor for me to do that. I love this community. I became involved in the government in this community because of what I do here, and I had the pleasure of sitting on the council, the village council, and the honor of being the village president. So I felt like I had input on how we were growing. And I can't say enough about the career that I've had because I've been here in this community.
That's wonderful.
And I've been able to fly in helicopters and ride in tanks.
And go to a dairy farm a couple weeks ago.
That dairy farm was fascinating. I loved that. And to me, that was my element. I loved being on a farm. Yeah. So,
let's talk about family.
Okay.
You talked about your kids. You talked about you and your hubby.
Right.
And he's still working?
Yes, he works. He's semi-retired.
Okay.
He works 2 days a week at a business in downtown Detroit, doing the same thing, making braces, and he's done that for 45 years or better.
Yeah.
He also has his own business where he does canvas repair for boats, or he creates canvas or sail repair, and he does that because it's a hobby for him.
Okay.
He loves it. We do have 2 sons.
2 sons.
One
in the area?
They're both in this area.
Wonderful.
The youngest has 3 sons of his own, and he lives in Lake Orion, so we get to see them often. There's Grayson is 7, Pearson is 4, and Hudson is 2.
Ooh, little
And
one.
so we're busy.
That is neat.
Yeah, we're fortunate because we all get along. We all prefer to spend time with each other. When they go up north camping, they invite us wherever they go or whatever they do. We're very fortunate. We get along very well with my son's wife, whom I can remember when my son was in preschool. He went to Montessori, and he got in the car one day and said, "Mom, I'm in love with Sierra. She's an apper," and he ended up marrying her.
Wow.
That was their first serious relationship. So I know the whole family, and it's just been lovely.
Okay. That's the youngest son. Oldest son?
The oldest is not married, but he has a lady that we love and adore, and she actually was raised on Pine Tree. So, yeah, what goes around comes around.
Yes.
They're up and coming. They travel a lot. They've been to Peru and Mexico and Iceland, and they just got back from Banff, and they're travel freaks.
Excellent. So what do you do when you aren't doing this and with family? What are some hobbies?
That's basically it.
That I know.
I used to garden when I lived in Oxford. We lived right in town, and that was my therapy. We had a huge pond in our yard, and I gardened constantly from the time
Both flowers and vegetables, or primarily
Just
flowers?
flowers.
Just flowers.
Yeah, prior to that, we lived like 2 years in Metamora while we were looking for our home here in Oxford, and I did have a vegetable garden. I would love to vegetable garden again because I really believe in organic eating, but unfortunately we live in an area that has arsenic in the soil and in the water, and so I kind of gave up my gardening
In that area,
hobby.
yeah.
Yeah.
You got 2 strikes against you.
Yeah, so I tend to go to the farmer's market instead, which I believe in buying local. And we have a great farmer's market in Flint and in Davison for all of you people out there that are looking. And I like the one in Detroit as well, but
and
these are
even
closer.
in Pontiac at the county complex
Yep, I
on
go there
Saturday
too.
mornings, and little town of Clarkston has one
Yeah,
Saturday
that's a fun
morning.
place to go.
But it's growing and expanding, and again does provide folks with that nutritious option.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
so you said you had some big koi.
So
In
my
your
pond,
pond?
yeah, in my pond in Oxford. So it was a really hot day one day, and I started digging. I wanted a pond. I just wanted a little waterfall in my backyard. Well, I went to work, and Don went and rented this tiny little backhoe, and we ended up with a 3,800-gallon
Oh wow.
pond. And so my girlfriend had a plethora of koi, and she gave me 2 that were this big. And I had them for about 4 or 5 years, and they knew me. Everybody else could go outside, they didn't care less. But if I walked out that back door to the pond, both koi would come over and talk to me, I said. I was the one that fed them, you know. But so the big one ended up drowning himself.
Fish don't
I
drown.
know, that one did.
It's kind of like the way you were born. You said.
I know. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen to me.
Right.
It had this catch drain where the water
It got
went out.
sucked in there.
Yeah, and he ended up drowning in there. But I had them for 4 or 5 years, and they are trainable if you want a koi. They're trainable.
This has been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks.
Your life
I didn't
is
think
remarkable.
that I had anything to talk about.
We've done a
Thank
wonderful
you.
job.
I've
It has been
fortunate.
a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Teri.
you. You did a wonderful job.
Well, thank you. Together we did good.
That's right.
Okay, until next time.